My name is Axelman. Thank you for coming out. I'm here to talk about solar energy, the possibility of doing rooftop solar energy on your home, as well as talking about the net energy billing policy that exists in Maine. So I'll just dive right in. So just a very quick overview of solar power. Solar photovoltaic panels are essentially panels that you can put on your roof that will convert sunlight directly into direct current electricity. Now, this is a technology that's existed for a long time now. It was developed primarily in the 1970s, and it essentially hasn't changed much since then. It's just gotten a lot more efficient. But solar panels are generally placed on south-facing roofs and produce electricity that is direct current, and then needs to be inverted through an inverter that will convert the electricity to alternating current that can then be used in your house with all modern appliances, and then also can be sold back onto the grid. And it's basically gotten to the point where it's very straightforward to tie a rooftop solar project into your existing utilities and set up net energy billing to sell excess electricity back to the grid, which I'll get into in a little bit. So there are a number of reasons why it makes sense to look at doing a solar project in your house. First, that it's clean, it's renewable energy. There's no emissions, no pollution associated with the project whatsoever, and it's renewable. You're not burning anything, you're not using a limited resource, all you're using is the sun's energy. Energy independence. This is electricity that is generated here at your house and used at your house. You're not using resources from out of state, and you're not using any energy resources that have to be brought in from outside of the country. And it reduces your carbon footprint. Electricity is a major source of carbon pollution in the United States, and especially in your individual life, there's a lot associated with your car, a lot associated with heating your home, and then a lot associated with powering your energy. And this is one way to reduce that last category. And then solar panels are a good investment. The cost of solar has come down dramatically in the last few years, and the payback for these projects, even in Maine where there aren't a lot of solar-specific incentives, you can still get a payback on the project at today's electricity rates in about 15 years. I'll go into that in a little bit. And the other nice thing is that you're essentially locking in a electricity rate, and you're not vulnerable to price increases that are generally, historically, about 2.5% to 3% a year increased over time. Right now, electricity prices are a bit depressed because there's a glut of natural gas, but every forecast that you look at doesn't really expect that to last forever. Prices are going to go back up, and this will help protect you from that. And increased property values. If you're installing solar panels in your house, there's a capital investment in your house, and solar panels have a life of 25 plus years. People that have solar panels that they installed in the 70s are still operating. There's slightly reduced efficiency, but still producing 80–85% of their peak capacity now. And that this is an investment in energy in your house that will stay with your house and will add value if at some point you decide to sell. So there are a number of incentives that exist for installing solar energy in your house. One is a federal policy that's been around for a long time, an investment tax credit. Now, this is a 30% tax credit that is worth 30% of the full installed value of the project, and it's essentially a credit that you can claim on your federal income taxes when you file them, and that's a pretty significant savings there. Also, New England and Maine specifically have a policy called a renewable portfolio standard, and it's essentially a requirement that utilities buy a certain amount of renewable energy each year, and the amount increases year on year. What the actual effect of that is that it creates a commodity called a renewable energy credit that essentially represents the value, the societal value of producing clean energy. So when you generate electricity from a solar project or from a coal plant or from a natural gas plant, you're getting the same thing. You're getting electrons that go onto the grid and are electricity. But when you generate power from a solar project, you're also getting other benefits. The benefit of not having pollution, the benefit of not depleting, depletable resources. And basically the renewable energy credit is a value that you get that it's a commodity that represents that value. And there's value there because utilities are required to buy them. And generally the value of a renewable energy credit now is about 2 cents per kilowatt hour, which helps. And also net energy billing, which is a policy that I'll get into right now. So net energy billing is an electricity policy that's available to the owners of small and medium-sized renewable energy projects. Basically, the utility will install a meter that can measure the difference between electricity used at your house and electricity that is generated by the renewable energy project. And what it essentially does is if the project generates more electricity than the owner uses, then the excess electricity is sold back onto the electric grid. And what that means is that it essentially, when you install, there's always a little bit of a mismatch when you install solar panels on your house. If you are not at home during the day, if you're off at work, the sun's beating down on your house, the panels are generating electricity, but there's no one there to use it. You have no actual demand at that time. And then you get home at night, the sun goes down, you turn on your TV, you run the dishwasher, you're using electricity, but your solar panels aren't generating anything. What net energy billing does is it essentially smooths that out. The utility will buy all of the electricity that you generate during the day at full retail rate. And then at the end of the day, when you get home, the solar project's not producing power anymore, the meter spins the other way like it normally does, and you use electricity. And at the end, for every amount that you generate that you don't actually use, the utility will just give you a credit that will appear on your electric bill. And these credits will last for 12 months from the time that they're generated. So if at some point you're generating more power than you're using, then you can, like for example, in the summer, solar panels put out a lot more electricity in the summer than they do in the winter because of the angle of the sun coming in and also the amount of cloud cover. So if during the summer you're generating more electricity from the solar power project than you use, then you can use some of the excess credits that you've generated to offset your electric bill during the winter months when you're maybe not producing quite as much electricity from your solar project. So now I'll go into just the eligibility for net energy billing a little bit. All main utilities are required to offer net energy billing, and there are a number of renewable energy technologies that exist, including fuel cells, tidal, solar, wind, geothermal, hydroelectric, biomass, burning municipal solid waste in conjunction with recycling, and then also combined heat and power systems. But for our purposes, the size of these projects can be up to 660 kilowatts, which is like a medium-sized renewable energy project. That's the equivalent of maybe 3 or 4 acres of solar panels, or a small wind turbine, or medium-sized wind turbine. But the limit for the size limit for these projects in the 3 investor-owned utilities in Maine, which is Central Maine Power, Bangor Hydro, and Maine Public Service up in the county, 660 kilowatts. In municipal utilities, consumer-owned electric utilities, there are about 15 of those, and Madison happens to be one of them. The limit is smaller. It can be, the utilities are only required to offer up to 100 kilowatts in size, although they can offer up to 660 kilowatts if they want to. But just for scale, a rooftop solar array is generally 2 to 6 kilowatts in size. So the size limit is much higher than you would ever encounter in a residential size project. An important aspect about net energy billing is that the state of Maine requires that you must have an ownership stake in a project in order to utilize net energy billing credits from that project. So if you Location is not important. So if you own a solar project that is located on your roof, you can use net energy billing credits from that project. If you install solar panels on another piece of property across town or in another town, you can still use credits that are generated by that project as long as they're in the same utility service territory and you own a piece of it. And they actually allow shared ownership, so up to 10 different utility accounts can benefit from one solar project as long as they all own pieces of that project. So, I'll go into the economics of this just very briefly. The amount that you get for net energy billing credits varies depending on the utility territory that you're in. So you get a combination of the electric distribution rate, which everyone pays, and the standard offer electric rate. So New England has a deregulated electricity market, which means that the utilities own the electric grid, but don't actually own generation. And you can buy electricity from any generator that you want. But all utilities are required to offer basically a default service, that if you sign up for the utility, this is what you get unless you switch to another company. And the net energy billing rate is a combination of the default service electric rate and the distribution rate. And the amount that you get varies depending on where you are. In Central Maine Power Territory, currently for net metering, you get 13.3 cents per kilowatt hour for all, and that's the value of the credits that you generate that show up on your electric bill. In Madison, it's a municipal utility, and municipal utilities generally have lower costs because they aren't responsible for as much legacy transmission infrastructure, and they can finance projects much cheaper because they're eligible for tax-exempt loans. So in Madison, you actually get only 10.27 cents per kilowatt hour for net energy billing credits. And I'll just go through the very basic economics of one of these projects just to explain. So installing a 2.5 kilowatt solar array is roughly 10 panels, and that will generate about 3,175 kilowatt hours per year, which is about half of the average household's use of electricity. Since the average is about 6,000, after counting the federal investment tax credit, the cost of that would be roughly $7,000 and would produce annual savings ranging from $330 in Madison and $422 in Central Maine Power Territory, and then more if you're in Bangor Hydro or Maine Public Service. And so just assuming those annual savings and the average annual electricity price increases, you're looking at a payback for between 13 and 18 years for the solar project. Now this is not taking into account the value of the RECs. There's actually value there if you are able to sell. So utilities are required to buy RECs. Generally they won't do one-off transactions with an individual, but you can enter into a deal with an electricity broker, sell your renewable energy credits to them, who will then package them and resell to a utility. And there's additional revenue stream there that you can take advantage of. I didn't include that, but I also didn't include servicing costs for the solar project, any adjustments that need to be made over the years. So it should end up being relative. This is just a rough estimate, basically. But even a lot of states have solar-specific renewable energy incentives. Massachusetts, New Jersey, that will give additional benefits to solar project owners. Maine used to do a rebate program, but no longer does. But even without that, it can be a good investment to do solar on your house. And there are also additional benefits beyond the economic benefit that I went into earlier. So I think that's all I got. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So my understanding of the people owning, up to 10 people owning a solar project.
Right.
So if you and 5 of your neighbors, for instance, decided to put up solar panels and somebody has a farmer's field or whatever.
Sure.
If one person owns half of the solar, put up half the money for the solar array, and then the other person, then there may be the other people split that.
Mhm.
My understanding is the person who owns half of it gets half of the net energy billing. Is that correct, or is
I
it?
believe that's correct, yeah. And then I did have one more, just a quick rundown of options. There are, for installing solar in your house, there are a number of local installers that will do it. You can actually find a list of eligible installers that are certified by Efficiency Maine on Efficiency Maine's website. I just got a list of a few here: Revision Energy, Maine Solar Solutions, Penobscot Solar Design, Maine Solar Engineering, and Solaris. Revision Energy is actually here today. Another business model that's out there is solar leasing. So there are a number of companies that will essentially lease your roof and install solar on your roof for no upfront cost to you. They'll basically install solar panels on your roof and then sign a power contract with you to sell the electricity generated on your roof back to you over a long period of time. There are a number of companies that are involved in this space, including Solar City and Sunrun. I don't think they're that active in Maine yet, just because generally their big pitch is that they can sell electricity to you at cheaper rates than you're currently paying, so you don't actually notice any difference. In Maine, we're not quite there yet, because a lot of other states have incentives or are further south, so they generate more electricity than exist in Maine. In Massachusetts, these guys are everywhere installing projects left and right. But until you get solar-specific incentives, or the price comes down a little bit more, that business model probably isn't going to take off here. Another thing is that under current net energy billing regulations, you cannot qualify for net energy billing if you do not own the project on your roof. So the electricity rate that that Solar City or Sunrun could offer you is only the rate that you would only the wholesale rate. You can't get the full retail rate for that. So you're looking at roughly half. They can only it's very difficult to make the economics work without net energy billing for this business model. And Efficiency Maine used to do a rebate program, but that's now ended, and it doesn't look like they're going to start that up again. But they do have a PACE financing program, which can help homeowners afford panels without the huge upfront cost. What a PACE loan is, it basically will roll the cost of your renewable energy project into your existing mortgage and allow you to pay off the project over time with your mortgage, rather than having to spend the full $7,000 up front. The benefit of that is that if you are saving more money than you're spending on your monthly payment, then there's no cost to you. That's a program that exists. I don't know to what extent it's being used and the details of it, but that's something that you can get in touch with Efficiency Maine about to learn more about. Further?
And I understand that there's some towns that participate in the PACE financing and some towns that don't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Efficiency Maine said on their website that there's a list of